It's going to be that of restoration. It will be unhindered by anyone. God is overturning, he's recalibrating, and he's bringing you into your new. Touch your neighbor and say, neighbor, God is bringing you into your new season. When God brings you into your new season, nothing can stop it. Nothing can hinder it. The Word of God says that whom God blesses, no man can curse. Amen, somebody? Amen. And so God is going to bless you. He's going to bless you going out. He's going to bless you coming in. He's going to bless the fruit of your body. He's going to keep you healthy and whole and in sound mind to complete your assignment. Everything that you touch, everything that is connected to you will be blessed in this your new season. Say new. Position yourself. Be encouraged. Know that God is with you in this new day in your lives. And so when God raises you up, he has an assignment that you must fulfill. No one else can fulfill your assignment. And this is your new day. This is your coming forth day. In the name of Jesus, let us bow our heads and pray. Eternal and everlasting God, we give you thanks and we give you praise. We thank you for your mercy. We thank you for your grace. Thank you for protecting us as we slept last night and allowing us to see this brand new day. Now, Father, as we embarked upon this session of the Senate, we ask that you would be in the midst of us, oh God. Guide and protect us. Guide our thoughts and our deliberation. Lord, let them all be consistent with your will and your way. But Father, in particular today, this morning, we stand, oh God, asking for your mercy and your grace over our great nation, our Prime Minister, his wife and his family, and all governmental officials. Father, we ask now, God, that in the midst of what we're going through, we ask that you would protect us and guide us and keep us. We come against the spirit of murder that is on the land. We bind it up and we rebuke it in the name of Jesus. And we declare and we decree it will not be successful. Father, we speak peace over our nation, peace over our streets, peace over our young men. In the name of Jesus, we come as a corporate body. You said, whatsoever we bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever we loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. So we bind up the spirit of murder, violence, and rage, and we release peace over this Bahama land. These are our prayer today in the name of Jesus. And let everyone say, and as we say our Lord's Prayer, our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. If you believe today that God is bringing you into a new season of blessings, favor, and increase, I invite you to lift your hands and just say, thank you, Lord. Amen. God bless you. Have a successful day.
Thank you, Pastor Eileen. When we suspended yesterday afternoon, we were debating a resolution that reads, resolve that a humble address be presented to Her Excellency the Governor General, thanking her for her most gracious speech at the opening of Parliament. As many? The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Clay Sweeting.
Madam President, it is indeed a privilege and an honor that I stand on behalf of the people of North, Central, and South Eleuthera as a senator, and more importantly, the people of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, to thank Her Excellency, the Governor General, for her most gracious speech from the throne. She looked most eloquent and beautiful as she delivered a speech like no other. Lady Pinling, along with Sir Lyndon Pinling and my grandmother and grandfather, spent time together in North Eleuthera when the Honorable Peter Bethel won the seat for the St. John's constituency in 1982. They always spoke of her humbling personality and incredible demeanor. It is only by God's grace and His blessings that I am able to be here and contribute to the further development of this great country of ours. Madam President, We were sent here to do the people's business and to act on their behalf and in the best interest of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I do not take it for granted. First, I would like to offer condolences to the family and friends of Miss Angela Alden from Corinth, Eleuthera, especially her brother, Mr. Derek Alden. She was a great woman and someone that was loved by all in the Corinth and Eleuthera. She had strong ties to all the communities and showed her love throughout. I would also like to offer condolences to the family and friends of Miss Keisha Roberts, especially her mother, Miss Mildred, as well as the Roberts and Percenti families. Lastly, I must offer condolences to the family and friends of Mr. James Roll of James Cistern. He was a nation builder and community activist, a proud member of the Progressive Liberal Party, and part of our country's social, cultural, and economic reformation. Mr. Roll was a pillar of his community and of the country. May their souls and the souls of the faithfully departed rest in peace. Madam President, I am a former fisherman and a young businessman. My grandparents and parents raised me to toil and to work hard. The Bible says, by their fruits you shall know them. I don't pretend to be the most eloquent speaker or flamboyant, but one thing I am is a dedicated, hard-working Bahamian. One who wants to see the best of my country, for Eleuthera, for my home. I want my family to be able to live in an economically robust community with a proper education, proper health care, crime-free and safe environment. While I enjoy my time here in the Senate, I am here to work. However, Madam President, I'm not sure the government is. I share in the sentiments of my leader when he said that it seems to be becoming very clear and painfully obvious that this F&M government has no plan and no vision for this country's future. This is both unfortunate and unacceptable. Our primary purpose in this place is the passage of laws for the good government of the Bahamas. Many times during the campaign, we reminded the Bahamian people about the F&M stop, cancel, and review policy, and well, here we are. There are numerous persons in Eleuthera that were hired on the Job Empowerment Program that have not been paid in weeks and in months. These individuals wake up every day, get dressed, drive miles, or hitchhike to work religiously, day in and day out, and still are not getting paid. These are individuals that are working at the administrator's office, social services, the airport, and other government offices in Eleuthera and have not been paid in months. They call me almost every day wondering what has happened to this so-called People's Time government. Are they not the same people the F&M campaigned about, or is it something that we're missing? All I ask is pay the people. They worked for it. They earned it. Madam President, I read the speech from the throne thoroughly, but for some unknown reason, the fishermen and the fishing industry was not even mentioned once. Maybe there is an appendix I didn't receive, I don't know. Does this show the government's dedication to the fishermen of this country? Have they been forgotten by this People Time government? The last time we met...
Point of order. Thank you for yielding.
Now,
He's yielded.
he's yielded, but what is the point of order?
The point of order is the suggestion. It is an improper imputation against the government. The rules are very clear that imputations...
Hold on. Excuse me. Let me just...
Are you the president,
Let me just be clear.
Stop acting.
Okay, but would you please take it easy now? The president determines, and I am chairing this session, okay? I have asked everyone, if you stand on a point of order, please indicate what that rule is. I don't need any senator to decide that they are presiding over the session.
Madam President, the point is that the member is making an imputation against the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, which is impermissible under Rule 31, okay, which sets out the duties and the way in which the manner and content of speeches. The imputation that is being made is that the government of the Bahamas is not caring and doesn't care about the fishing industry. This is an absolutely spurious and ill-founded imputation, particularly in light of the fact, that the fishing industry in particular was targeted to receive a special exigency order directed to assisting the fishing community throughout the Bahamas to repair and replace and replenish all of their traps, all of their condos that had been destroyed by the storm surge of the last 2 hurricanes. And fishing equipment. It is improper for the senator to stand there and to suggest that the government is uncaring about the fishing industry.
Thank you, Honorable Senator. Honorable Senator Clay.
Madam President, it was my opinion. It was that the government, but it wasn't in the speech from the throne. It wasn't in the speech from the throne, but I have the exigency orders here, and it wasn't tabled when it was tabled yesterday, so it's nothing about fishermen and this order.
No, that was because the first 2 exigency orders, just to correct the record, the first 2 exigency orders, Madam President, were issued in the immediate aftermath of the hurricane. It was about a week or so later that the fishing industry and representatives saw the Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, and explained what had not been readily apparent, that because of the storm surges, they had lost the majority, if not all, of their traps and condos, and as a result of that, a later and 3rd exigency order was issued.
Thank you, Honorable Senator.
Yeah, you need, because this is the order that was laid yesterday, so it hasn't been tabled as of yet. So I guess it may be coming, but we haven't seen it. No, I can read this. I got this. As the Shadow Minister for Agriculture and Marine Resources, I made a commitment to be the voice for them and to do whatever I can on their behalf. I spoke about their plight and how the fishermen of this country are hard-working and resilient people. I spoke about the hopes that the government of this country continues with the PLP's initiatives to patrol the Grand Bahama Bays. Unfortunately, the fishermen are now faced with another harsh reality. Hurricane Irma swept across the Caribbean, causing devastation to a number of countries and wreaked havoc on our country, especially Ragged Island. My prayers and thoughts are with the people of these communities and their families. The fishermen of this country are now faced with the single most devastating natural disaster that has ever placed the fishing industry. I have spoken with many fishermen in this country, and according to them, they fear that the industry as they know it has a rocky road ahead. The fear that they may not able to provide for their families is overwhelming. Some fishermen will have to build their companies from the ground up. Most of these have been established for 30+ years. Lobster processing for this year to date is down 40% with a steady decline. If something is not done to assist the fishermen of this country, we may see communities that were once lavish and successful become another economy horror story. I issued a press release a few weeks ago in response to the Minister of Marine Resources' statement that they were reviewing the possibility of extending the grouper season to allow the fishermen to make the monies lost in the crawfish season as a result of the hurricanes during the summer. However, extending the grouper season would not be able to even come close to recoup the money lost because of the Category 5 storm. It is not possible to substitute the collection of grouper to counteract the effects of Hurricane Irma on the fishermen of this country. The fishermen have immediate financial needs, so they need immediate assistance. We must think logically when disasters occur, and the most efficient way to deal with disasters is not always the quickest. Fishermen across this country have lost a significant amount of hardware, including condos and traps, which damages their ability to harvest crawfish. A few vessels have explored the bank since the press release, and the report is much worse than anticipated. Fishermen across this country have lost millions of dollars in revenue, as well as in condos and traps. In order for the fishing industry to continue to thrive, fishermen will have to replace their hardware as soon as possible. The government of the Bahamas has made a commitment to restructure the Bahamas Development Bank. In September, at an Eleuthera Business Outlook meeting, the Deputy Prime Minister stated that the government was exploring the possibility of providing entrepreneurs with grants for their startup businesses. With that being said, my recommendation is for the government to make funds readily available for the fishermen of this country to replace the equipment lost during the storm instead of exploring the opening of the grouper season. This can be in the form of short-term loans or government grants to assist the fishermen to replace their condos and traps as soon as possible. Senator Thompson spoke yesterday about the possible restructuring of the Bahamas Development Bank as well. It is my hope that they will extend a helping hand to the fishermen of this country. I also heard the member for Kalani in the lower chamber speak to this order that Senator Bethel is talking about for the fishermen and farmers of this country. I haven't seen the order. However, for the record, I will say this. There is no use insulting the intelligence of the fishermen and farmers of this country with an order if it provides duty-free access for fishing equipment or farming, because they are already able to bring in such equipment duty-free. Don't try and make political brownie points, spewing rhetoric that has no significant impact on the lives of the people affected. The fisherman needs cash to get restarted. I would also like to address an issue that has been brought to my attention in regards to foreign fishermen. The government must review regulations and provide better oversight of pleasure crafts entering and leaving this country to protect fishing stock. The regulations provide for 6 fish of each species to be caught per person per day. Imagine if a crew of 10 is in the Bahamas for 10 days. In any event, I am reasonably advised that yachts with walk-in commercial freezers frequent the Exuma Keys, North Eleuthera, and the Berry Islands in particular. They then go back home with freezers full of fish, paying no mind for legislation or policies. This has been a continuing issue under both governments, but we must provide better oversight and enforcement, even of the existing regulations. There is also a policy that was implemented by the former government that makes it mandatory for foreigners who wish to bone fish to acquire a Bahamian guide as well as a fishing license. I do support the inclusion of Bahamian guides in the industry, but the process of acquiring a permit is cumbersome. It is my suggestion and personal opinion that the government implement an online licensing program whereby guides wishing to fish on the weekends can acquire a license through an online portal, pay with a credit card, and print the license at home. This will increase local bone fishing charter activity, as persons will not have to wait until the weekend is over to acquire a license. Inquiring minds want to know, Madam President, before the Progressive Liberal Party left office, the then government executed a contract with funding from the IDB to construct and install a reverse osmosis plant in North Eleuthera. This would in turn provide potable water to all the residents and citizens of the island. They need it, and I hope that the project continues. I have not heard much about it in recent months, so inquiring minds want to know, is the project still progressing? Madam President, inquiring minds also want to know, what is the government going to do to promote local land ownership and development in the Family Islands? Will they make available Crown land to qualified Bahamians at concessionary rates in communities such as the Bogue and the Bluff? I do support these type of initiatives, as these communities do not have access to purchase personal property And it is of my opinion that we must find ways to encourage Bahamian ownership. There is an old adage that states that land is wealth. Even in the past, you couldn't vote without owning property, and you were able to cast your votes according to how much property you owned. Inquiring minds want to know, what is the government going to do for local farmers? Will there be measures and programs put in place to encourage local farming with youth initiatives, with the possibility of canning factories and processing plants? Will the government provide tax incentives to industries associated with farming in order to promote the industry? We must continue to work towards being able to grow enough to feed ourselves. Madam President, what is the government doing with NHI? In the speech from the throne, the government promised to extend the focus of NHI to secondary and tertiary health care, as well as oversee the incremental implementation of a progressive and functional national catastrophic health insurance program. In July, the Minister of Health stated that the government has made it very clear to the Bahamian people that NHI will be improved. He said that he made a commitment to the Bahamian people to make it work. I find this so odd that in July, the government made a commitment to continue to enroll people with NHI, and here we are today, 3 months later, and persons contracted are being let go. How can the People's Time government properly roll out NHI without proper staffing? I am told that employees contracted under NHI has been released in North Eleuthera, and all its staff in Grand Bahama was released yesterday. I am sure the government might make the assertion that there's a difference between expiration of contracts and termination. That is well and good, but at the end of the day, the people are without jobs. We just spoke in depth yesterday about Freeport and saving Grand Bahama. You cannot allow people to go without a job and expect to save the economy. If the government was serious about providing proper health care for the citizens of this country, let me ask, how can they do it without adequate staffing and resources? Inquiring minds want to know. Madam President, will the government abide by its promise to construct, upgrade, and expand state-of-the-art facilities and services throughout New Providence and the Family Islands, inclusive of a mini hospital on the island of Eleuthera? The Progressive Liberal Party laid the framework, architectural renderings, in the initial phase of the mini hospital in Eleuthera. I am told that the project is on hold. Inquiring minds just want to know, will they enhance the conditions of service for all healthcare staff and facilities? In Arbor Island, the former administration approved a public-private partnership to demolish the old government administration office and construct a new one in Arbor Island. This new administrative complex would house a new police station, magistrate court, administrative office, and other government entities. Trailers were sent to Arbor Island to serve as temporary office locations for these entities, while the old complex was demolished and a new one constructed. Unfortunately, this project too seems to have fallen to the government's stop, review, and cancel policy. If the government supports the people of this country and the people of Arbor Island, then why is the project sitting on the shelf, or is it canceled? Inquiring minds just want to know. The people of Arbor Island want to know. I am sure that the Member of Parliament for North Eleuthera will not sit by and let that project be canceled. Just because it was a so-called PLP project doesn't mean that the government shouldn't complete it. Let's not play politics with the lives of the people of this country. Let's not be political when it comes to the betterment of our Family Island communities. Madam President, in the speech from the throne, the government dedicated themselves to provide a one-stop shop for the ease of doing business in this country. In the latter part of September, at the Eleuthera Business Outlook that I spoke about earlier, I listened attentively as the Deputy Prime Minister spoke about the government's initiative to provide a one-stop shop for doing business. I do support this. I feel that businesses, especially on the Family Islands, are disadvantaged and the red tape seems never-ending. As long as it is initiated correctly and efficiently, I support it. Businesses should not have to wait 3 to 4 months just to get a business license because of the paperwork involved. All inspections and procedures should be procured from one location in order to speed up the process and in turn encourage Bahamians to become business owners. I'm a Family Island boy. I understand their frustrations. It is time that the Family Islands are no longer treated like out islands, but as peers with Nassau. Madam President, I have seen on social media that some supporters of the side opposite call members of the Progressive Liberal Party salty, which I assume means bad sportsmanship. This side, the opposition, has said on numerous occasions that election is over. We lost. Get on with governing. We are looking for a bigger, brighter future in the PLP as we renew, rebrand, and revamp the party. So if you want to say we're salty, you're right, we're salty. We're salty on behalf of the young lady who's working every day as a janitress, traveling miles, hitchhiking to work, just to ensure that her father can buy medication. You're right, we're salty. We're salty on behalf of the young mother who is working 2 and 3 jobs just to get by, hoping to provide for her children to give them a quality education. Salty, you're right, we're salty. Salty on behalf of the people of this country that were promised VAT exemption on breadbasket items, but are still waiting. Salty, you're right, we're salty. Salty on behalf of the young men and women
Excuse
in
me,
this country
senators. We do have a senator on the floor.
that were promised a free college education, but has yet to be offered it. I'm salty on behalf of the fishermen of this country. I'm salty on behalf of the farmers of this country. I'm salty on behalf of the thousands of people that need proper health care, but cannot afford it. Madam President, I will close with this. In the book of Ecclesiastes, it states that to everything there is a season, a time, a purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up which was planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. This is Afenim's time. They say this is the people's time. We all have our time. So people's time, government, don't waste the people's time. God bless you, and God bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I support this resolution.
Thank you, Honorable Senator. You know, Senator Clay Sweeting, you have a way of pronouncing and saying Madam President that no other senator can do in here.
Excellent.
The chair recognizes Senator Carl Bethel.
Thank you. Senator, you are young in this place, and you're certainly salting well, but I would not wish for your salt to lose its savor, as the Bible says, because wherewith will it be salted if it loses its savor? The point being, though, that I would have thought that, well, I understand the PLP may be a little disorganized right now because you're going through some elections, if you will, but one would have thought that your colleagues in that other place would caucus with their colleagues in this place, and that you would end up really being given all information necessary to help you make a correct statement in this place. The exigency order is dated, but no, you made further comment. You made a further comment, which I will address in a moment, is dated the 27th of September. You then went on to say, after you hadn't seen it, you having not seen it now, you now then assert that we were somehow bamboozling or fooling people talking about giving exemptions from customs duty because customs duties already exist. Well, let me inform you, sir, that had you been provided with a copy of the order by your colleagues in the other place as part of a proper pre-parliamentary consultation, which ordinarily happens in established parties, you would be aware that the exigency order applies not only to exempt customs duty, but also to exempt VAT, which is payable ordinarily. So there are real exemptions being given to the fishing community. And the order made pursuant to that exigency declaration applies to materials for fish traps and assembled traps, fishing vessels, engines for fishing vessels, bait and feed, major fishing gear, freezing units and installation for fishing vessels only, excluding chest freezers and refrigerators, navigational equipment, reverse osmosis and ice-making machines to be fixed on the vessel only, bone fishing skiffs, vessels, boats, and engines. And so, Madam President, the fact of the matter is that the erroneous statement of someone trying to fool someone is totally erroneous and really should be withdrawn. The fact is that real exemptions are given from VAT as well as customs duty, and that the government has made an order that applies to a wide range of tools and equipment necessary for the fishing industry to recover from the damages caused by the hurricanes. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the Honorable Clay Sweeting.
Madam President, I don't know, I maybe sound different when I say that, but what I said was that it's my hopes that he is not doing so. In token, duty-free is already exempt from all those items. So you can't give an order. Now, if you want to give an order on VAT, I understand, but let me get to my point. What I'm saying is, why put both? You just exempt them from VAT if they already exempted from duty.
Let me clarify that there are legal reasons why the exigency order is made under the Tariff Act, and therefore it has to relate to tariffs, which are customs duties. So it starts off by basing itself in that, and then the minister exercises authority elsewhere.
If I may,
Chair recognizes
Thank you
the
so much.
Honorable Michael
Madam
Dabo.
President, first of all, in coming to the defense of my colleague.
Are you the acting leader of opposition to?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Yes. Thank you so much.
There's no such post.
No, but as you're aware, the leader is not here, and me and my colleague is here. And coming to his defense, prior to him putting his speech together, he went to the House of Assembly to find this particular document. It could not be found. He went yesterday to find this document. Fine. You said the document was late. No, that's fine. No, we don't deny. We would first of all like the document to be distributed, if you don't mind, to the member, to give him an opportunity to speak pertaining to the document. But he spoke based on his opinion. And his opinion was clear. Because like the fishermen in Eleuthera, the fishermen in Grand Bahama were not consulted as it relates to this exigency order. And a lot of items that were supposed to be in the exigency order were not placed in it. And so the question is whether or not this exigency order does help the fishermen of this country. That is the point my colleague was trying to make.
Thank you very much, Honorable Senator.
They were not consulted.
The clerk of the House, I think, has taken note that you went over to the Parliament and you tried to receive some information. So I think that's,
That's all he was able to get.
the point is the clerk is in the House, and that should be addressed because all of a sudden the clerk could bring it over. So that should not happen. As many? Chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Dion Folks.
Madam President, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. This biblical passage from the Gospel of Matthew is very popular and often quoted. It is not always easy to practice this admonition, Madam President, but we should try. Yes, we should try to wipe every tear from every eye. Helping the hungry, the thirsty, the impoverished, the sick, and the imprisoned is one of our primary obligations. Coming to the aid of those in distress is our Christian duty. I fully and unequivocally support the Prime Minister, Dr. Hubert Minnis, in his compassionate and Christian approach to offering aid to Dominica, our sister Caribbean state, in their hour of great need. Madam President, I am grateful to the Prime Minister for giving me the opportunity to assist and advise NEMA, along with my colleague, the Honorable Dionisio de Aguilar, Minister of Tourism, on the massive evacuation of residents from Michael, Ragged Island, and Bimini prior to the arrival of Hurricane Irma. It was a huge undertaking and involved a very complex ground and air transportation operation. I commend the Prime Minister for personally getting involved at NEMA at every step of this process. Captain Stephen Russell and his able staff at NEMA did a yeoman's job. I also wish to commend Mr. Trevor Baston and his staff at the Met Department. They gave us very good predictions and they were on target all of the time. We also want to thank all of the civic and business groups who provided drinks, food, and clothing at the shelters. Madam President, we commend the administrators, local government officials, police and defense force officers who went beyond their call of duty. Some of them went door to door, Madam President, to get the residents out of their homes and onto the planes, and in one case, onto a mailboat. And Madam President, they did this in the middle of the night, in the early morning, and on some islands in the rain. We thank all of the airlines and boat operators who participated. These include Bahamas Air, Sky Bahamas, Flamingo Air, Pineapple Air, and Mr. Tom Hanna's mailboat service, which also assisted in transporting the Family Island residents to New Providence. Once in New Providence, the evacuees were safely housed at the New Providence Community Church and the Kendall Isaacs Gymnasium. There were also many who stayed with their families and friends. We wish to also thank Majestic Tours for their timely assistance in a great hour of need in transporting the evacuees from the airport to the shelters. Madam President, we wish also to thank Bimini Resorts and their owners, the Genting Group and the Capo Group, for offering the government, the Prime Minister, to reopen their main hotel in Bimini, to take in as many as 400 Biminites if it became necessary. We thank God that it was not necessary. Now that the storm has passed, the government and NEMA has shifted its efforts to rebuilding damaged communities and supporting the residents who are adversely impacted. It is our goal to bring help and restoration to all those affected as quickly as possible. We are convinced that our combined efforts indeed saved lives. I was honored to be a part of this massive undertaking. Madam President, I intend during the midterm budget debate in a few months to fully address and account for the hard work and many accomplishments of the Department of Labor and the other agencies and commissions which fall under our ministry. Permit me, Madam President, to speak specifically to those matters mentioned in the speech from the throne and to tell a personal story about our relationship with both Her Excellency and her husband, the late Sir Lyndon Pinley. Madam President, in addition to the economic challenges facing us today, the fight against crime also remains a most serious challenge for the government and for the nation. I am convinced, Madam President, and I have been so convinced for a very long time, that until we deal with the societal and economic conditions of many of our communities, we will continue to experience a serious crime problem. The government has devised a comprehensive initiative to tackle the crime problem, but more importantly, to improve the lives of Bahamians who, for any number of reasons, are marginalized and left out of the mainstream of our society. A subcommittee of cabinet, of which I am a member, has devised a holistic approach to alleviating the crime problem. It is called the National Community Empowerment Initiative, or NCEI, chaired by the Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture, the Honorable Michael Pintard. The subcommittee is focusing on 4 major areas. Number 1, social upliftment. Number 2, economic empowerment. Number 3, prevention. And number 4, enforcement. Major parts of the social upliftment initiative include a national mentorship program, volunteerism, faith-based partnerships, and community youth activities. The economic empowerment component includes training schools, apprenticeship programs, employment initiatives, and youth enterprise programs. The prevention component includes CCTV, neighborhood crime watch, conflict resolution programs, and urgent action by the Royal Bahamas Police Force. The enforcement component, Madam President, includes several new initiatives already announced by the Honorable Marvin Dames, Minister of National Security, who is also a member of the subcommittee. Our focus, Madam President, is on a community-based solution to crime. Accordingly, the Ministry of Labor is developing and devising a plan to take our employment exchange to the various neighborhoods in Nassau and in Grand Bahama to sign up as many unemployed persons as we can. We're going on the blocks, Madam President, on the basketball courts, outside popular business establishments like food stores and wash houses. We are taking our employment exchange unit to the people. Too often, we have applications for work permits in a number of areas, and we do not have qualified Bahamians on our list at the exchange to refer to the employers. Madam President, let me just cite some of the areas where we have a shortage. Housekeepers, gardeners, farmers, air conditioning workers, welders, engineers, nurses, specialized teachers, spa therapists, butlers, food and beverage managers, and financial services traders and wealth managers. And that's only an example of some of the shortages that we have. May I take this opportunity, Madam President, to appeal to qualified Bahamians, wherever you are, who are looking for a job, to please register with our exchange. Whether you're in Nassau, Grand Bahama, Abaco, Exuma, Eleuthera, Long Island, wherever you are, go into the labor office and register. Madam President, we are focusing on a national approach to training. We have consulted several institutions in this regard, including the University of the Bahamas Technical and Vocational Institute, hotels, the financial services sector, and the industrial sector in Grand Bahama. We have also consulted private technical training institutions in Nassau and in Freeport. We want to devise a coordinated public-private sector training initiative where we can focus our efforts on training Bahamians for the demands of the existing marketplace. In the financial services sector and the maritime industry, we are in the process of devising plans to institutionalize education and training from the primary and high school levels. We have looked into some of the initiatives in Singapore, the Cayman Islands, and other jurisdictions as to how to approach this question of training in the financial services sector. The country we are most impressed with, Madam President, is the country of Estonia, where the government and the private sector begin the training of Estonians for the financial services sector from the primary school level. For example, Madam President, the acquisition of language skills is essential in order to maximize participation in the high-paying jobs in the international trading and wealth management sectors. The constant training in information and technology, IT skills, at all levels. The educational system is a major part in the success of the financial services industry. If we are to maximize the benefits to Bahamians, I am of the view, and we are of the view, that we have to begin the process of making a cultural change with respect to financial services. And it must start with our educational and training institutions. Madam President, the Consumer Affairs Division of our ministry is inundated with complaints from consumers with respect to commercial bank services charges and the increase in these fees and charges. This is a major concern for the government. These complaints include the increase in fees to cash checks, to obtain reference letters, increase in credit card late payment fees, to even an administrative fee on saving accounts. At my invitation, the Clearing Banks Association and the Central Bank of the Bahamas have agreed to hold separate meetings to discuss these issues next week. The chairpersons and members of the three consumer protection agencies will also participate in the discussions, along with members of the Tripartite Council. They include Mr. Philip Beneby, who chairs the Consumer Protection Commission, Ms. Zenaida Dossett, who chairs the Prices Commission, and Ms. Pauline Curry, who chairs the Bahamas Bureau of Standards and Quality. We will also have in those meetings a representative from the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce and Employers Confederation, the Trade Union Congress, the TUC, and the National Congress of Trade Unions, the NCTU. Madam President, we have received numerous complaints from the workers of Club Landor on Paradise Island, and we have had several meetings with their representatives. The basic issue at Club Landor is that there is a significant amount of back pay owed to the line staff and managers at that resort. We met with one of the owners and the general manager last week to bring a resolution to this very serious and outstanding issue. I can assure the workers at Club Landor that we are doing everything in our power to get this matter resolved. Madam President, we are in the final stages of concluding industrial agreements with customs and immigration and air traffic controllers unions. Madam President, I wish to thank Michelle Dossett, President of the Commonwealth Union of Hotel Services and Allied Workers in Freeport, Grand Bahama, and Mr. Obi Ferguson, President of the Bahamas Managerial Association, for their continued support of the government's efforts to reopen the Grand Lucayan resorts and to revitalize the Port Lucayan area in Freeport. Madam President, I also wish to advise that we continue to receive complaints from the staff at the 3 major resorts in Abaco, particularly at the resort at Treasure Key. And I have received a formal request from the Member of Parliament for North Abaco, the Honorable Darren Henfield, to intervene in this matter. Along with the MP, I intend to visit all 3 of the properties to meet with the line staff and management. Madam President, we continue to receive numerous complaints from the Exuma Keys with respect to unfair treatment of workers, particularly workers from Black Point. And these workers reside, some of them reside on private keys, and some of them commute back and forward from the main keys to the private keys. Along with officers from the mainland Exuma, I have visited the keys on more than one occasion and have resolved some of the issues, Madam President. Our office in Georgetown is diligently addressing the outstanding issues in the Exuma Keys and, Madam President, at some of the resorts on the mainland Exuma. Madam President, the MP for North Eleuthera, Mr. Ricky Mackey, has made several complaints to me with respect to several properties in his constituency, and in particular, one on Harbour Island. I wish to assure him and the workers that we are addressing their concerns. Madam President, I also had the opportunities to address labor-related issues on Grand Bahama and at Bimini. I will not get into the specifics during this contribution, but I want to say there are still a lot of outstanding issues on both islands. Madam President, I thank Her Excellency Dame Margaret Pinling, Governor General of this great nation, for her most impressive and detailed speech from the throne, in which, with the utmost grace and poise, she outlined this government's plans and agenda moving forward to serve and help the people of this great nation. Madam President, I have known Her Excellency for a very long time. Our families were at the early days of the PLP, and a few years after majority rule in 1967, we enjoyed a very close relationship, namely because of my father's, Sir Arthur, and Her Excellency's late husband, the Right Honorable Sir Lyndon Pinland's relationship, which was based on a strong friendship, and a common political objective: the complete political and economic emancipation of our people. For over 35 years, after 1970, there was a separation of the friendship, both personally and politically. Madam President, as you are aware, my father, along with 7 other dissidents, broke away from the PLP in 1970 and formed the Free PLP. And then in 1971, the great institution known as the Free National Movement. It was only after 1996 that they, along with Her Excellency and lady folks, rekindled their friendship while my father was serving as High Commissioner to the Court of St. James in England. In 1989, there was an incident outside of the House of Assembly where I was physically assaulted by the then Prime Minister. By the then Prime Minister, Sir Lyndon Pinland. Yes, yes. The Attorney General was my lawyer in that case, and he did an excellent job. He won at both levels, including the Supreme Court. I was physically assaulted by the then Prime Minister, Sir Lyndon Pinland, during an F&M-sponsored demonstration. One of these days, I'm going to bring the photograph to show senators. Sir Lyndon would later explain that he was only chastising his godson. He, just for the record, he was not my godfather, but we understood what he meant. So the reunion in London was significant for several reasons. Sir Lyndon and I made up at a luncheon at his home in 1999, several months before his passing. Her Excellency was the only other person present, and she graciously hosted me. Several months after that, Sir Lyndon called me and asked me if I would arrange for my father and lady folks, along with 6 others of his chosen, to attend a private dinner at his residence. My father agreed, and along with my wife Emma and others, we had a wonderful evening at the Pinland's home. In 2000, several months before his passing, my father at his home hosted a reception in honor of Sir Lyndon and Her Excellency. Both men paid emotional tributes to each other. The leader of government business, the now Attorney General, Minister Bethel, and his wife Lisa were also present, along with the former Attorney General, Alison Gibson, and her husband, Max, among others like the late Sir Clement Maynard, George Smith, and about at least 70 to 80 persons who were present. So, Madam President, when I thanked Her Excellency for her gracious speech, and it was gracious, I also thanked her for the role she played in our political and social development, but also in the role she played in the reconciliation between my father and her husband, and to a lesser extent with me. As a nation, and as a people, maybe it is time for a period of national reconciliation. Maybe it is time for a kinder, gentler approach to our political discourse. I entreat, yes, I invite all of us in this upper chamber to begin that process of national reconciliation. And maybe, just maybe, our followers and our supporters will do likewise. I thank you, Madam President, for your indulgence.
Thank you, Senator Folks. As many, the chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Jamal Moss.
Madam President, it is with esteemed pleasure that I stand before you again in this honorable place. I remain ever grateful to the Almighty God for the health and strength that He has given me, because without Him, I would not be able to stand here before you today. I would also like to take this time to thank my honorable leader and Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Hubert Alexander Minnis, for his reposed confidence in my ability to be a part of the makeup of the government today. I am also honored and privileged to be amongst men, honorable men and women within the Senate today. I also wish to extend my best wishes and abiding love to all the citizens and residents of those Bahamian Islands that sustained major and other damages as a result of the passage of Hurricane Irma, particularly those in Ragged Island, Salina Point, Acklands, Bimini, and Freeport, Grand Bahama. Irma's passage marked the third successive year that the Bahamas has been hit by a major hurricane. The destruction or damages caused by Irma, particularly in Ragged Island, has been described as the worst witnessed in the Bahamas since Hurricane Andrew in 1992. In fact, this is the first time in the modern history of the Bahamas that an entire island has witnessed the wholesale destruction of its infrastructure, both public and private, as occurred in Ragged Island. The government response to this has been admirable. Furthermore, Prime Minister Minnis has promised to build a more resilient Ragged Island, and I have no doubt, none whatsoever, that he will indeed live up to that promise. I got to write them up. In light of the new superstorms, we are now experiencing with greater attention to prepare and protect our people. The government is of the view that there is a need to legally require mandatory evacuations. I applaud this government for its initiative to convene a panel of experts to study, advise, and report on the efforts the Bahamas must take in response to threats posed by frequent and severe hurricanes, some of which become monster storms. I also applaud the government's decision to review the country's building codes and to ensure that the building code enforcement becomes a much greater focus in response to the severity of storms we are now experiencing. The government's decision to focus on developing more resilient coastal communities throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas is significant in mitigating the ravages of climate change and rising sea levels associated with these superstorms. The creation of the online tool called the Bahamas Hazard Viewer will enable decision makers to quickly identify areas in the archipelago where people and property are most vulnerable to coastal hazards due to factors such as elevation and the and the presence of intact mangroves and seagrass beds, or the lack thereof, is laudable. This knowledge will lead to better planning of development in the most sustainable and smart manner, as a project explored a number of future development scenarios and how each scenario might impact fishing, coastal protection, tourism, agriculture, and other benefits that natural environments provide to people. As a result of the work, government planners and decision makers now better understand the economic values of the coastal environment and trade-offs and long-term implementations of coastal development. To quote the Honorable Prime Minister, it is imperative that we continue to plan for coastal resilience. We know that we cannot continue to rebuild our coastal communities in the same manner after each storm. We must support the smart growth of our communities, end quote. I stand here today to thank the Almighty God for preserving Bahamian lives, in spite of damage or destructions caused by Hurricane Irma. As my beloved grandfather would say, in all things, give thanks to the Almighty. While thanking the Almighty for the lives He so graciously preserved, I would like to also thank those Bahamians living in the impacted areas who heeded the Prime Minister's call to evacuate, particularly those in Ragged Island. Let me also take this time to express my sympathy and empathy for our CARICOM member states, our other regional neighbors, and our neighbors to the north, whose countries was ravaged by Hurricane Harvey, Irma, and Maria. May God continue to bless you and to keep them as they go by. Now to the business at hand. Madam President, I have looked at the task and mandate of what the purpose of a government should be, and I have summed it up in 4 categories. 1, a government is in place to maintain social order. 2, provide public service. 3, make economic decisions in the best interest of its people. And 4, the protection of its people. Madam President, I rise also to extend my gratitude and appreciation to our beloved Governor General, Dame Marguerite Pillin, for her extraordinary representation in outlining this government's agenda in the speech from the throne. Dame Margaret and I met for the first time in 2003 in St. Andrews when I traveled with the then host of Immediate Response, Dara Miller, to cover an event to donate computers to a school in the name of her late husband, the country's first Prime Minister, the late Right Honorable Sir Lyndon Pillin. I walked up to Mrs. Pillin, introduced myself, and I introduced myself to her, how I have heard and read a lot about her husband, especially given the opportunity to meet him once. What was supposed to be a just introduce myself turned to a 20-minute conversation. We shared knowledge and laughter, and she told me, and I quote, "Wow, I have never met someone your age who can talk about my husband. He was truly a great man." And then I asked her to take a few pictures, and she said, "Yes, of course." Those moments I share with her, courtesy of God, I will never, ever forget. And Madam President, for our viewers out there in the wider community, I will share the pictures with you. These are pictures when, back in 2003, when I allowed my hair to grow, I was with the then host, Dara Miller. I was a technician at ZNS, as you can see. And this is me speaking to now Governor General, Ms. Margaret Pillin. And we took a picture, so I will pass it on to my colleagues so you can see. Don't laugh in my hair, you know, but oh, in front of the camera again? Sure. Sure. Yeah, thank you, sir. I came from humble beginnings. Thank you. Thank you, those officers. Appreciate it. I'll pass it on. Oh, thank you, Corey. Madam President. Madam President, Her Excellency Dame Margaret Pillin, the Governor General of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, said something so significant in her delivery of the speech from the throne, and I quote, "My government has therefore pledged to voice aspirations, dreams, hopes, and desire of our people." End quote. this is one way that a government maintains social order. In a democratic society, the voice of the people should be respected and taken into consideration when it comes to policies, statutes, and business decisions of a country. The people's government made a commitment from the speech of the throne to be attentive to what it is our people desire to be as a nation, what we dream of becoming, and what we hope of a collective future. Madam President, as a child growing up, one thing that I can always say is that those around me held around me steadfast to the principles of God, Jehovah, and His holy word. We must understand that without the church community, it will be near impossible to change the society of this Bahamas. Her Excellency assured the Bahamian people that, and I quote, "We purpose to enlist our religious communities to assist my government in reawakening and reestablishing those national values as persistent, ongoing, and ever-growing effort. And with an eye to the future, we fervently ask for the support of our religious community in bringing an increasing number of our young people, and especially our young Bahamian men, back to becoming fully engaged members of our spiritual communities," end quote. This is very important because the religious community is the moral conscience of the society. This community reminds us of core principles that will keep us on the straight and narrow. We as a government must understand that in society like ours, it is a must that we employ the church community to assist the government in restoring morals back to our homes and communities. Principles such as love thy neighbor as yourself and let love be without hypocrisy, hate what is evil, cling to what is good, are just two godly principles that can restore our communities socially, and I also applaud the government of the day for recognizing the importance of church community in the restoration of our society and maintain social order. Madam President, a government must be able to make decisions that are in the best interest of our country economically. One of the promises Her Excellency reminded us of is the establishment of a national skill bank overseas, which will begin to involve Bahamians outside of the Bahamas in the development of our country. And for this, I have one thing to say. Colleagues opposite, I have one thing to say. Mission accomplished. Madam President, Prime Minister Minnis made good on his promise to establish a skills bank overseas when he made his visit to the Bahamas, Mission Atlanta in Georgia. This is the right thing to do, as we have Bahamians living outside this country who now have the experience we are now bringing to foreigners to perform. This skills bank will give Bahamians a fair chance of utilizing their skills in top positions in the country of their heritage. Additionally, many of our citizens overseas have built up the necessary business contacts and investment expertise, which will allow more entrepreneurial and major investments led by Bahamians. Madam President, this is a challenge our country among young people that goes far beyond unemployment. We are faced with some young people who are unemployable because they cannot complete secondary school with the required qualifications and are lacking basic skills. But there is hope. There is hope. Her Excellency advised the nation that our government intends to focus on training programs that will aid in correcting this problem, thus giving young people a chance to sit at the table and enjoy a piece of the economic pie of this country. I want to advise the Senate and the wider country that we have begun to do just that in the Fresh Start program, which is in the Ministry of Youth, Sports, and Culture, which is right now affording hundreds of young people an opportunity to be trained and prepared for the workplace. So, Senator Clay Sweeten, this is what the people's government is about: investing in Bahamians and giving them a fair chance. Madam President, another way that the government ensures that the economic interests of the country are preserved is to put a stop to corruption amongst high-ranking politicians and public officers. I often say this: only the poor people of this country pays for corruption. Madam President, With allegations of corruption amongst high-ranking politicians, it is imperative that the government finally takes the bull by the horn and introduce an anti-corruption legislation to save this country's finances. Her Excellency assured us that the government ministers will be held at the highest standards and that anti-corruption legislation will be introduced to curb the high levels of extortion and bribery that we have seen in the recent past. Madam President, another job of the government is the protection of its citizens. Before I go on, Madam President, I would like to offer my deepest sympathy to the families who have lost a loved one to the careless acts of violence. Any kind of violence deeply saddens me, but it is even more painful and heart-wrenching when children are the victims, because I too am a parent. And I have never been in a position, but I can only imagine how those families feel. And I commend our Prime Minister who took time out of his busy schedule to visit the family of the child who lost his life to a senseless act of crime. I say to them, may God continue to strengthen you, and I will continue to pray for you as you go through this hardship. Madam President, crime is a cancer in our society. It is affecting the safety of our citizens, tourists, businesses, and it's degrading our society morally. It is an issue that has to be confronted with force and logic. We have to employ crime-fighting strategies that are current, and we must employ technologies that are state-of-the-art, along with necessary training our officers in order to stay current. Her Excellency gave a basic overview of this government's plan and approach to fighting crime. The Governor General assured us, and I quote, "My government firmly believes that to live and work in a safe, secure, and prosperous community, it is an enabled right of all citizens of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Our steadfast resolve is to target the root causes of crime and implement modern crime-fighting strategies. My government is committed to collaborating and working with community leaders such as the parents, educators, church leaders, youth leaders, social workers, and all relevant agencies of the government. Through neighborhood safety programs and community-based partners, the culture of violence in our country will change. My government continues to be committed to zero tolerance for crime, inclusive of minor infractions. Our most urgent priorities in crime fighting are initiatives that focus on prevention, deterrence, and enforcement. Again, I say it again. Our most urgent priorities in crime fighting are initiatives that focus on prevention, deterrence, and enforcement. My government will enact needed legislation going forward, but when speaking about the zero tolerance approach, Madam President, I had the opportunity as a representative of the upper house to go visit my colleagues in the lower house, and I heard the member for Mount Moriah, who's also the Minister for National Security, and he spoke. He said, I quote, that since May 2017, the police has executed the new zero tolerance approach with precision through aggressiveness, anti-crime operations through the capital with a focus on crime hotspots, prolific offenders, persons with firearms, gang members, persons in violation of their bail, drug peddlers, shutting down drug houses, and persons in violation of the traffic laws. The new strategy is reaping positive results, he stated. Between May and September of 2017, police have arrested over 269 persons of array of serious offenses ranging from murder to robbery. They have seized over 125 illegal firearms and 5,316 rounds of ammunition. In addition, 9,381 penalties were issued to drivers in violation of our traffic laws. The police have also ramped up their drug interdiction efforts by executing over 140 anti-drug operations since May of this year. During this time period, over 10,332.15 pounds of marijuana and 1,428.87 pounds of cocaine have been seized. Drug enforcement, he added, has executed over 120 search warrants on suspected drug houses and have also searched over 1,186 persons. A total of 627 persons have been arrested for drug-related offenses, 528 of whom were subsequently charged and placed before the courts, Mr. Dean said. This clampdown has resulted in many well-known drug houses which are operating for far too long in our communities, to be finally shut down. Despite the success, there remains much work to be done. Crime is an issue that this government is serious about resolving or tackling. We realize that we must bring together all members of society in a collaborative effort to combat this morally degrading cancer. My government is committed to the exploration and development of untapped resources of the Family Islands. Consequently, my government will promote diversification in tourism and banking and promote more Bahamian ownership in these industries. The Minister's administration recently announced that it is committed to providing Crown land grants to Bahamians, especially descendants of various Family Islands, for a variety of economic projects, including tourism, agriculture, and other areas incentives of the sustainable economic development of the Family Islands. This includes providing initiatives. This includes incentives of the development of small, environmentally friendly boutique hotels, bonefish lodges, and other small quality resorts that through marketing and promotional support. A major objective of the plan is to empower descendants of the various Family Islands to return to their place of birth as a part of an overarching plan to revitalize and rejuvenate Family Island economies. Sound sweet, you following me? Very good, very good. As you can see, the government is hell-bent on making sure that the Family Islands is prosperous. Yes, sir, yes, sir. Come join us. My government will establish a committee to look into this implementation of local government in New Providence. Preliminary studies have already begun to assess the feasibility of introducing some form of municipal governance in New Providence. The preliminary studies, which were conducted through the Inter-American Development Bank sponsored project. A number of public and private agencies have already been engaged in the exercise, with additional public engagement scheduled for this month. My government will construct, upgrade, and expand a state-of-the-art facilities and services throughout New Providence and the Family Islands. The Family Islands, my brother, it's everybody. The Stephen Dilly Primary School recently underwent a transformation that included construction of 29 new classrooms, spaces in addition to administrative offices, library spaces, resource centers, multimedia and media rooms, and additional bathroom spaces. 2 preschool classrooms have been added and will accommodate 40 students. The new preschool spaces will be 100% Wi-Fi, so that we will be able to facilitate the government's intention of introducing iPads to preschool students, which will be facilitated there. Stay tuned, stay tuned, stay tuned. In addition, Madam President, a few short years ago, public school students were getting less than 7% of the scholarship grants that were available. Less than 7%. This year, the government of the Bahamas, along with the 16 colleges and universities, have invested approximately $12 million in public school students in the form of scholarships for this year's students over the next 4 years. $5.5 million for the returning public school scholars. Among those partnering institutes are Central State University, Florida Polytechnic University, the Middle Tennessee State University, and much more. Madam President, this year, the University of the Bahamas this year has accepted 318 that were awarded full scholarships, and 222 received partial scholarships. In total, 440 students are studying at the University of the Bahamas as a result of this program. This year, the caliber of 15 National Merit Scholars was unprecedented. Collectively, this small group has taken more than 100 BJC examinations, earned more than 80 BJC's A grades, and have been accepted at 14 colleges and universities outside the Bahamas. This year, the Ministry of Education received over 4,000 applications for various scholarships. The scholarships and the bursary programs. Out of those, 393 bursaries were given to students to attend the University of the Bahamas, and 480 were awarded through the National Scholarship Program. So, for the opposite side yesterday, who said that, oh, the government's not doing anything in education, but hey, like I said, the proof is in the pudding. Stop reporting these fake news. The awards are 13 merit scholarships, which values to $265,000, 15 academic scholarships, which value to $150,000, 41 technical BTVI and other institutional value at $221,500, and 416 grants, which value up to $2.7 million. All that total up to $3.3 million. Senator David, I think you missed what I said earlier, that, in the recent years, it was less than 7%. We moving forward. We making inroads. I don't know what y'all's doing, but, y'all gotta find money for carnival. Y'all gotta find money for this contract and everything. Well, guess what? You brought it up, so I just thought I'd finish it. Anyway, statistics on scholarships, 63%. Thank you so much, colleague. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. When you speak, I'll listen, all right? 63% of awards recipients were females, 37 were males. The institutions, 22% were local institutions, 50% were U.S. institutions, 20% were Canada, 8% for Jamaica, China, and Scotland. The applicant breakdown, 81% came from New Providence, 30% came from Grand Bahama, and the remainder, because at the end of this government looks out for every island that makes up the Bahamas, including the Family Islands. Long Island, Ragged Island, Abaco, Eleuthera, Abaco, and I got to say the best for last, Crooked Island. Let me have from Crooked Island, man. That's what you want to do? I got to check your roots. Madam President, and speaking about Crooked Island, I have good news to share that repairs to Crooked Island High School will be completed today and on Tuesday, and next week Tuesday. It'll be open. Madam President, I just want to highlight that I know I called off some colleges, and I just want to share with colleagues. At the end of the day, we are a government of transparency and facts. We don't just talk, because that's the good thing to do on Facebook these days. But we talk, we have facts. I share with you, Madam President and colleagues, pictures of students that benefited from the government's scholarship program. And this right here, yeah, I'll show it to the camera. As you can see, it's multiple pictures, so I'll just show a couple and let's pass it on to my colleagues. As you can see, Bahamians in different universities. They are excited, truly grateful that the country is doing all it can to further their dreams and aspirations, to make it become a reality, beyond the 7% that happened in recent years, but that's why y'all are the past. Yeah. That's why y'all over there and me over here. But I just pass it on to you, Madam President, and colleagues, so you could look over it. I know the colleagues opposite are eager to see those pictures and praise the government as they get ready to go into the convention. According my government will institute urban development for revitalization in the city's communities and expanding the reach of social services. The government just on Tuesday, October 10, announced that the country's urban renewal centers will be constructed to aid the revitalization of inner city communities. Several centers are to be combined and new ones created in Michael, Long Island, Mount Moriah, Adelaide, and Bamboo Town. Centers are to be reopened in Cat Island, Rumkey, Central, and South Eleuthera, North Andros, North Abaco, and Exuma. There will be a total of 25 centers at the end of the exercise. 20 center managers from within the various communities will be appointed to facilitate the restructuring. There will be a return to appointing leaders from within those communities who can deal effectively with the issues they can personally identify with. I would like to let the people of the Bahamas know that you are in good hands. We will do what it takes to bring the country to a place of economically for all citizens to thrive if they so desire. We will continue to keep the social order of society. We will ensure our citizens are well protected, and public sector reform will be seen in the next 5 years. Madam President, as I wrap up, just want to take this time to, remind our colleagues opposite, who goes on this rant every day on Facebook, in their press releases, on social media, and even now at the national stage in here, just like yesterday, claiming that the government ain't doing this, the government ain't doing that. Y'all in power. Come on, man, 5 months ago. I mean, you only do that in 5 years, but you want to give us hell for 5 months? But at the end of the day, colleagues, I think it's my duty to let the BNB people know why you're doing this. I understand. No, y'all get rid of yourself. But Madam President and BNB people out there, I can understand the reason why they're doing this. Convention is coming up. And, they got to put red meat there to get their base excited. And I know me, I ain't coming to that. No way. They want to get their base excited. And, some are vying for positions and some want to keep their positions, and I just hope that going forward, I can't answer that. I just want to say, I don't know what the future will hold because, the next time you come in here, we might see some new faces. I don't know. But, then I understand why you do what you do because you got to keep that position. But, Madam President and BN people, I can assure you, Madam President, that in the year 2022, when elections are called again, the Bahamas will already be in a position of prosperity and safety, and the Bahamian people will have no problems, none whatsoever, returning us to govern their affairs. I thank you, Madam President. I support the speech from the throne.
Thank you, Honorable Senator. As many.
Y'all still my friends, right?
The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Jennifer Isaacs Dotson.
Yes, sir. You got to talk. Oh, okay. Thank you. Look, boss. Little boss of man. I cut my crap off.
Madam President, Gloria Arroyo said about governance that we have to be bold in our national ambitions. First, we must win the fight against poverty within the next decade. Second, we must improve moral standards in government and society to provide a strong foundation for good governance. Third, we must change the character of our politics to promote fertile grounds for reforms. Madam President, I stand here today to thank Her Excellency, the Governor General Dame Marguerite Pindling, for her most eloquent speech from the throne. Dame Marguerite is a woman of elegance, stature, grace, excellence, and she is a nation builder and a national treasure. Madam President, we have recently experienced the effects of Hurricane Irma, which has caused considerable damage to the southern islands, ranging from Crooked Island, Inagua, Maygona, Ragged Island, and Acklins. We are thankful that generally the Bahamas has weathered the storm well, but we must keep in our minds and hearts the Bahamians in these communities as they are focusing on rebuilding and offer assistance in any way that we can in this process. And we must remember those communities such as Low Sound and West End who are still recovering from Matthew. We must note the frequency of tornadoes like those that affected Grand Bahama and Bimini, and hurricanes that we are experiencing, which is a relatively new phenomenon. And we must focus on and plan strategically moving forward for these hurricanes and protection from tornadoes. I supported and I thank the Prime Minister and his cabinet for the decision made for the voluntary evacuation of our southern islands. We will need, however, to be more innovative and purposeful in how we move forward, given that climate change is alive and well. And we in the Bahamas need to take this matter very seriously in the way we treat the environment and make developmental decisions. We need to explore banning styrofoam and plastic, which is being done by many of our fellow Caribbean islands, as it is having an adverse effect on our environment. Madam President, as a country, we must celebrate the fact that we had elections on May 10, 2017, without any violence and a high voter turnout of 88%, with 175 candidates from 5 political parties. However, sadly, the amount of women that decided to offer themselves as candidates remains unacceptably low. Indeed, the actual amount of women elected is even more distressing. There are only 5 females out of 39 members of Parliament. And sadly still, we know that in the current cabinet, there is only 1 female. While one would have hoped that this gender balance is slightly better in the Senate, again, there is now balance and women are still outnumbered, as there are 7 female senators and 9 male senators. However, we're not alone with this continued imbalance. In fact, the Gender and Political Development, Women and Political Leadership in the Commonwealth Information Brief tells us that as of August 2015, a lack of gender balance in decision-making positions in government still persists. Global statistics reveal that women continue to be underrepresented in national parliaments. Only 22% of all national parliamentarians were female, a slow increase from 11.3% in 1992. The share of women among ministers now averages at 17%. The highest positions are even more elusive. As of August 2015, only 11 women served as head of state and 13 served as head of government. Madam President, as women, we must be intentional here. In a real way, this is a national security issue, and our august body would do well to lead this charge. We, men and women of the Senate, must galvanize ourselves to ensure that we find ways for our country to benefit from the involvement of women and men alike. Because we know well the challenges that face women and their ability to contribute to decision-making in the country. And we must cultivate and be intentional in how we move forward. Perhaps it is time for there to be national quotas. The next election cannot find us wanting, and we must find ways to have more balanced voices in our parliament. Also, Madam President, we as parliamentarians must remember that we are servants of the people, not people being our servants, and govern ourselves accordingly. Madam President, this causes me to pause and reflect on the alleged comments made about the Honorable Glenys Martin Hanna, who is running as leader of the opposition party, and that it was allegedly said that she must stay in the bedroom and kitchen. I imagine the speaker of those regressive, dismissive, and still comments would also wish her pregnant. Madam Speaker, in 2017, these very words cut to the core of my being. Imagine that someone would have uttered such contemptuous words about a Bahamian. Whether they are male or female is irrelevant. This comment only supports the fact that the Boys Club is alive and well and still don't want to see women in leadership. As a woman, Madam President, I stand here today to condemn those utterances, if they were said, and those thoughts, as we must support each other and respect the decision of a woman to run for a leadership position. We must see a woman running as we would view any other candidate, as she should not be defined by her sex, but should be defined by what she brings to the table and her leadership capabilities. I denounce this hate speech, this way of thinking. Our country cannot afford this. And I say, Madam Speaker, that this type of thinking and valuing of the female is indicative of the way we treat women. Despite the fact that we think that women have made great strides, these statistics will startle you. Wednesday, October 11th, was International Day of the Girl Child. Every 5 minutes, a girl dies as a result of violence. 1 in 4 girls get married as a child. 75% of human trafficking victims are female. 63 million girls have undergone female genital mutilation. 130 million girls are out of school. And girls are twice as likely to become infected with HIV. So there is a global goal to end all forms of violence against girls by 2030. And shockingly, our country leads as one of the world's highest per capita in violence against women. We are in the running as a leader for the most rapes, murders against women. It must stop. It begins with us. What are we going to do? Madam President, the Bahamian people voted for self-discipline, industry, loyalty, unity, good governance, and an abiding respect for Christian values and the rules of law. The F&M committed to pursue policies that promote harmony and not division, a mandate for change and for the accelerated development of all of our people. Madam President, as we look around in this Senate chamber, we see many new faces in the realm of politics, and the same can be said of the lower house. Refreshingly, we see many young new faces that bring a different perspective to the table. The millennials must be given greater opportunities to serve and be a part of the national development of our country. We must go out and recruit the many Bahamians who refuse to come home because we do not create opportunities for them. The National Skills Bank for Bahamians to register overseas is already in place within the Department of Labor, and you would have heard the Minister of Labor, the Senator, the Honorable Dion Folk, speak about this. This government has pledged to reduce the high level of youth unemployment and total employment. The ILO tells us that there is 71 million unemployed youth worldwide and 156 million young workers living in poverty. Youth employment remains a global challenge and a top policy concern. The ILO, or the International Labour Organization, has a long-standing commitment to promote decent work for youth, supported by a unique tripartite structure that brings together the key players in the world of work. The ILO's activities on youth employment span over advocacy, knowledge, development, and dissemination, policy and technical advice, and capacity building services. Therefore, the approach to youth unemployment and total unemployment is to take a tripartite approach. The Bahamas Chamber of Commerce and Employees Confederation, the trade union movement, and the government must work together to tackle this issue that affects all of us. One such way that we can deal with this problem is job opportunities can be created by the government, creating centers of excellence, think tanks, where we allow young people to meet and create new bodies of knowledge, inventions, patents. Youth unemployment will be addressed with specialized programs that will equip young people with essential job-related skills and provide employment opportunities. The establishment of more public-private partnerships to encourage youth ownership and entrepreneurship. Suggestions such as developing a group of young individuals between the ages of 25 to 30 to become entrepreneurs within the tourism sector in the area of ecotourism and sports fishing industry. This will require them to be trained in business through the Bahamas Development Bank, trained in fishing through the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, and tourism through the Ministry of Tourism sector. The most promising candidates are given loans through the Bank of the Bahamas to start their business. The Ministry of Tourism can use their influence with the cruise ship industry to promote these businesses on board the ships, as well as these young persons advertising their business through social media. In essence, what we have done is create about 20 new businesses. This process can then be repeated in the next 2 years. We cannot continue to close the door and tell them that they are overqualified or have no experience. Incentives should be given to businesses to encourage them to grow and hire more persons. Madam President, restoring the values of discipline, loyalty, being our brothers and sisters' keeper, honesty, determination, self-worth, hard work, being on time, is what we as Bahamians enjoyed many years ago. This is critically important to our government, but how do we do this? We all know that parents must be held responsible and accountable for their children and their actions. And what if they don't know how to parent? How then do we help them? From the research I've read, many young parents want the best for their child, and yet don't know how, except to work 3 jobs and don't pay enough for them to feed their family and provide for their needs. However, in their absence, we have children raising children. How do we find ways to help them? How do we involve our youth civic organizations, such as the Girls and Boys Brigade, Girls and Boys Scout, Awana, Junior Achievement, the Governor General Awards, just to name a few? How do we get more NGOs to become more involved in providing meaningful activities for our youth? As the old adage says, it takes a village to raise a child. And this is critically vital to the success of our country at this point where we are. These non-governmental organizations, or NGOs, must also be given funding to do the work that they do in the community, with, of course, accountability and transparency in how those funds are used. Can we not find the funding to support and monitor these NGOs to help us, knowing that the goal of all of these programs will be to develop a citizen that will be one that is able to make valuable contributions to society and not be a burden on society? That should be the goal that we should be striving for, not for them to end up in Foxhill. The goal should be for them to make valuable contributions to our society. Our government has committed to implementing the Office of Ombudsman, enact and enforce anti-corruption legislation, constitute an independent electoral and boundaries commission, establish term limits for the Prime Minister, introduce a recall for non-performing members of Parliament, establish an office of an independent director of public prosecutions, create a Bureau of Investigations, establish and strengthen the independence of the Office of the Auditor General, amend the Public Disclosures Act to include campaign finance reform, to make provision for direct referral to an independent prosecutor, a national intelligence agency, and legislation to address the conditional release of offenders into society through a parole and probation offenders section, guns and gang unit, and the Court Services Act. A tall and necessary order for us. I would like to suggest that we look at implementing fiscal responsibility legislation, bring into force the Freedom of Information Act, a real one. Madam President, establish the Sovereign Wealth Fund, reduce VAT rates in the over-the-hill areas, establish a tripartism approach to resolve the mortgage crisis, for example, by giving judges some discretion as opposed to making foreclosures mandatory. We have too many Bahamians that are losing their homes. We must do something about this. In reality, Bahamians would like to see the changes to the court system happen, where trials are held and dealt with in a timely manner. This is critical. In order to improve our social and economic development, Madam President, we must have an aggressive legislative agenda over the next 6 months to inspire the public confidence that what was said on the campaign trail is going to happen. Bahamians still want to live in a Bahamas where there is equity in the workplace. Imagine that. Equity in the workplace. Home ownership, adequate health care, education, and the ability to retire with an income that they can live on. I would like to suggest that we establish a small claims court, as there are too many persons out there who use the system and actually raw persons. But yet, if they have to go through the process that we presently have in place, it is very timely and very time-consuming. So a small claims court would address some of those issues. This is greatly needed so that serious conflicts do not happen. This court should be one where citizens can go to without hiring a lawyer, which of course most of the times they cannot afford. Madam President, the government has committed to provide a safe, secure, and prosperous community, which is a right of all of the citizens of in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. The solution to crime must be taken as a holistic approach, involving all of the community, parents, church leaders, youth leaders, social workers, all agencies of the government, NGOs, special interest groups, the opposition, labor, and other political parties. In essence, Madam President, crime affects all of us. So all of us must be involved in solving this vexing problem. We need to fund and use better technology, science, and criminal justice to close the gap in completing cases. White-collar crimes are on the increase in the financial, commercial, and cyber crimes. Therefore, our technology systems must be robust and able to effectively deal with all it will encounter. Madam President, a good educational foundation must be established at the primary school level. Therefore, your best teachers should be teaching at that level. We must strive to reduce class sizes so that we can effectively meet the needs of our diverse students who all learn in different ways. We must increase the literacy, numeracy, and communication levels within the entire country. We must work more closely with our males and ensure that their education continues post-primary school. We must attract more males to the teaching profession by increasing the salaries of teachers. Yes, by increasing the salaries of teachers, whose worth is sorely undervalued, and yes, we are underpaid. Perhaps because it's perceived to be a woman's work is maybe why we are underpaid. We must aspire to get more males going on to tertiary level education, be it at the University of the Bahamas or the Bahamas Technical and Vocational Institute. In order for our society to progress, we will need students to go into the technical and vocational area, as the data shows that this is the new future of work. Not being an academic with a degree. More hands-on is what is going to be needed in the future. And we need to fund these areas if we are serious. The new government, this government, has pledged to expand this area. The Education Act will be reformed and a National Education Commission will be established. The long-term goal of the Ministry of Education, of course, is to end social promotion. This is one that requires much more dialogue with all of the partners in education, but more importantly, the teachers' aides, the trained teachers, the administrators, officers, and other officials at the Ministry of Education, and the unions that represent them must be involved in this dialogue in order to implement a plan to do such a thing. The matter of single-gender classrooms need to be better researched moving forward and deciding what works best for us as a country. However, Madam President, in the speech from the throne, there is little mention of tertiary education at the Bahamas Technical and Vocational Institute and the University of the Bahamas. There are many concerns stemming from both institutions, and the Minister of Education with responsibility for these institutions must become more involved in what is truly going on at them. I raised a number of points in reference to the University of the Bahamas. What is the point of renaming or having renamed the College of the Bahamas, University of the Bahamas, if we take in less Bahamians? And if we send all of our college prep students, one of the most lucrative programs that we have at the University of the Bahamas, to the Bahamas Baptist College. I've never heard of anyone sending a money-making program to another institution and giving away money that is most needed by the University of the Bahamas. What is the point of having a University of the Bahamas if we refuse to hire Bahamians because they don't have PhD degrees? What is the point? Are we willing to sell our souls for SACS accreditation at the expense of having a university with no Bahamians? Because if we continue in the trend that we are not hiring Bahamians if they do not have a PhD, we will have no Bahamians at the university in the next few years. Why is the administrative leadership of the University of Bahamas only concerned with acting as if they are doing substantive things, when in reality the industrial climate at the institution with the faculty is at an all-time low? The government should be concerned when we continue to hire administrators and consultants to do the jobs of persons who are hired to do the job, but are incapable of doing so, so we hire more administrators to pay them top salaries, and we hire more consultants to pay them more money. Something is not right with that picture. Despite many offers and suggestions of meeting times, the President and the Provost refused to enter into negotiations with the Union of Tertiary Educators of the Bahamas, whose industrial agreement expired since June of 2017. The list of violations of the current UTEP and UB industrial agreement is too vast to mention, as that would take up my entire speech. As the primary tertiary institution in the country, we should be modeling how to have good industrial relations. But instead, management does not want to deal with difficult situations and take a strong-handed approach with particularly faculty, because the union stands up, writes, and speaks about the many issues that they are not dealing with. However, we all know that academia is supposed to be the place where we should be able to disagree, but to sit at the table to discuss the same with a resolution in mind. Faculty do not expect to be called obstructionist or dysfunctional by the president of the institution. As the College of the Bahamas, now University of the Bahamas, has been here since 1973, and it will continue on when all of us will have moved on, including the president and the provost, and myself. Health, another topical issue, is of great concern to any developing nation. Citizens have a basic right to affordable health care. Our government has pledged its commitment to national health insurance, but will be critically looking at the current model. I wish to emphasize the importance of community health and a public health approach to address health issues. For example, when we look at the violence that is happening in Fox Hill, this can be dealt with through a community health approach, where all stakeholders in the community accept their roles and responsibilities and mobilize around the issue. Again, we have to remember that as a community, we have to work together and look after each other, that we are our brothers and sisters' keeper. The answers that we seek are in the community, and the strategies are found in the partnerships that we form. Mental health still carries a stigma in our society, and we need to embrace it as a normal experience for everyone. Therefore, we need to embrace a holistic approach to the same. This approach must acknowledge that all persons have problems. All of us at some point in our lives have experienced problems, and we will experience some problem later on down. And if we don't address those problems, they can advance to major health challenges, leading to mental illness if we don't deal with it. Strategies like talking, sharing, communicating with one another, being our brothers and sisters' keeper, and simple rituals like eating lunch together and having more family time, where families talk, tell stories, and fellowship together, instead of everyone being on their cell phone, texting or WhatsApping. When you look around, even when you go out to dinner, you see everybody at the table with their cell phones in their hands. We have to cut that back. We have to take time to learn to talk to each other more now, except through WhatsApp. The environment is another area that is sadly lacking in the speech from the throne. As I noted earlier, the massive superstorms carrying tornadoes is a response by Mother Nature to balance a world we have helped to heat and harm with our insatiable appetite for more. Madam President, I am becoming increasingly distraught at the world we are living for our children. I have a son, I have 3 grandsons. At the rate that we are going with how we treat our environment, it scares me as to what kind of place, or if there will be a place, for my grandchildren to grow up in. Our own country is one of the top 10 countries to disappear under the ocean due to climate change. I'll say that again. Our own country is one of the top 10 countries to disappear under the ocean due to climate change if we don't start focusing on what it is that we need to do. Fossil fuel use, choices we make daily, including the eating of industrial farm foods, all contribute to this. We have no other choice but to confront this head on. This means that every decision that we make must be responsible. Case in point, somehow, someone in this country made a decision to allow a floating styrofoam dock to be built in Bimini. And when Irma passed, of course, the dock was destroyed. So today, all these weeks later, this poisoned styrofoam is floating somewhere across our waters, is embedded in our seaweed and mangroves, and is being eaten by the birds and the fish. And eventually, you and me, and somewhere in this country, you and me will end up eating some of the same food that has ingested this styrofoam. And somewhere in this country, there should be a way to clean this up as a matter of a national disaster. It is like the oil spills at Clifton. We cannot be serious about leadership and governance if we don't put front and center the health of the environment. We are killing ourselves, and we are killing our world, and we are destroying our children's future. Madam President, as a government, when it comes to technology, we must move into the 21st century. We must ensure the connectivity of the government network through all of our islands, from north to south. This will allow for all of the government departments and ministries to be on the same network, thereby making the sharing of information among the government easier. For example, in getting a business license, why should I have to go to NIB to get verified and to this place to verify this when the business license office can easily interface with NIB to get the information that they need? It is also critical for the entire police force to have all the various stations throughout all of our islands, including New Providence, to be put on this network as well. The world has advanced through technology, therefore it is time for the Bahamas to do the same. Technology, of course, may be costly at the onset, but in the long run, it will save the country millions of dollars. It will definitely be a key factor in the ease of doing business in our country and a plus for Grand Bahama, who will be focusing on technology to turn the economy around. Madam President, while the speech from the throne covered many of our issues, the speech fails to address key issues such as energy reform, natural resources, social issues, sports, and labor. Social issues such as alcoholism being consumed by many young persons and other consumers and causing a myriad of issues from rape, domestic violence, abuse, unwanted pregnancy. We must address this lifestyle as the children born to these teenagers suffer at the hands of parents who are children themselves. We must encourage through education and training a different lifestyle and strengthen our family structure. When we look around the Bahamas, we see a country that is dirty, that is filthy, and citizens no longer take pride in their surroundings and environment. We must encourage country beautification. We need the speedy repair of public properties such as guardrails, street lights, poles, sidewalks, buildings, derelict vehicles. Drivers must be held responsible for damages from accidents. Abandoned buildings must be demolished to create green spaces. The control of flies, rats, and mosquitoes are important, as these pests carry a number of diseases. The government must hire persons to sweep and clean the streets on a weekly basis. Derelict vehicles is a major problem, as they are abandoned anywhere and are hazardous, and is the foundation for pest infestation. Energy reform is critical to our country's survival. For a country that has sunlight for 12 months of the year, we must advocate and implement a solar plan. The government must encourage citizens to invest in solar to reduce the dependency on BPL and BEC. The use of our natural resources, which can provide the financial resources we need based on the state of finances in our country. We, the government, must encourage Bahamians to become involved in businesses that involve our natural resources. Why do we insist in bringing in foreign businesses to do this instead of our own? We must empower men in our community so that they feel wanted, trust, and have a chance to excel in what they're good at. As I said, not everybody needs to have a degree. We need people who can do work with their hands. For example, service centers can be built and space rented to mechanics so that they're not forced to turn their homes into mechanic shops, devaluing their properties and homes. And I'm sure if you've driven around now, in Nassau in particular, every mechanic operating from their house, they have a bunch of cars around, which is not good for the environment and not good for the people, other people who live in the community. The food business must also be regulated. We have too many unlicensed food vendors which provide health risks to the consumers. There is no idea as to how this food is prepared, what type of sanitation. We have too many neighborhood restaurants popping up in our communities and fish fry where bathrooms are not readily available. Madam President, in sports, we must pay attention to this area, as this can bring in income, particularly if we market sports tourism with the Ministry of Sports and Tourism working together. Sports, as I said before, is also a vehicle for deterring crime. Sport programs will provide youth with the qualities and characteristics they need, such as discipline, determination, and to be productive citizens in our country. When we look at labor, Madam President, labor is the most important commodity in our country. Without labor, nothing happens. Yet, labor is treated as an afterthought. In the financial sector, the Bahamas Financial Services Union continues to face challenges with the new forms of employment being used, such as contractual workers, the hiring of non-Bahamians by the banks to do jobs Bahamians can do, but yet they continue to get work permits. Computerization of the financial sector will result in the loss of jobs. We also have, coming out of labor, we have the issue still with sandals happening. The dilemma of the Bahamas Hotel Maintenance Allied Workers Union on February 2011. The Privy Council ruled that the Bahamas Hotel Maintenance Allied Workers Union has the right to represent sandals workers in the Bahamas. 6 years later, workers at Sandals are still being denied the right to collective bargaining according to this ruling and the ILO Convention 98. It appears that certain employees who have been invited into the Bahamas to do business, and we give millions of dollars in concessions, can mistreat the workers while ignoring the ruling of the highest court in the Bahamas. Something is wrong with this picture. If we as Bahamians are to continue giving these incentives to Sandals Hotel, we need our politicians to demand better treatment of the workers, not only at Sandals, but of all of our workers throughout the length and breadth of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. The workers of Sandals are not getting representation, are being treated poorly. We call upon our people's government to stand up for the workers, stand up for the rule of law, and have this matter resolved forthwith, so that negotiations can begin, which will bring better terms and conditions of employment to workers at Sandals Royal Bahamian Resort. As a reminder, the union has been trying to get Sandals to meet and negotiate on behalf of the workers. This seems to be a trend. We have employers who refuse to meet and treat with unions when industrial agreements need to be established or when those agreements have expired. This failure by Sandals to meet with the union resulted in the union taking out private prosecution against Sandals' executive. As we all know, the Bahamas government, without consultation or without consideration to the well-being of the workers of Sandals, nollied the proceeding before the court at great expense to the union and the workers. Remember all the nollies that were being given out? Yeah, bring it up. Gave the union to prosecute. To add insult to this reprehensible action by the Bahamas government at the time, the government then gave Sandals Hotel permission to terminate 600 workers. Sure we all remember that? Yes. Using the farce of redundancy. It's been 5 months now since the people's government have been in power. Tell us now if we will fix this problem. In conclusion, Madam President, I thank the Governor General for her gracious reading of the speech from the throne. And I say, fellow parliamentarians, we have a lot of work to do. Yes. I have sat here and heard my fellow senators on the opposition side speak about KISS and the fact that workers have not been paid, but no reason given as to why these workers were not paid. So when you come to this honorable place, come with all the facts. I suggest to the opposition senators that perhaps they need to go back and check to see where the PLP government was or what they had accomplished in the first 5 months in office. But maybe they have forgotten. Madam President, in closing, I want to reaffirm that there is only one government of the Bahamas for all of the people, not for some of the people, including the fishermen and workers of this country. We must all work together to move our country forward. Instead of just being critical, offer suggestions as to how we can fix the problem. Madam President, as I take my seat, Franklin D. Roosevelt said it succinctly when he said, "Let us never forget that government is ourselves and not an alien power over us. The ultimate rules of democracy are not a president, in our case, prime minister, and senators, and congressmen, members of parliament, and government officials, but it is the voters of this country." Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Senator. We recognize the Honorable Carl Bethel.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, this is not a criticism on what I thought was a very spirited and challenging speech.
Yes,
But I think I must re-emphasize for the benefit of all who may be within the sound of our voices that Senator Isaac Stotson and Senator Renard Henfield are what we call consultation senators. They are appointed by the Governor General on the advice of the Prime Minister after consulting with the Leader of the Opposition. And yes, and also Senator Ferguson as well. Senator Anna Faye Knowles Ferguson. Sharon Anna Faye Knowles Ferguson. I will get all those names soon. So we have 3 consultation senators appointed in that manner. And as I have made clear from the moment of their appointment, they have full freedom of expression without regard to the government or party line in this place on matters within their peculiar interests, the interests that, in respect of each of them, drew them to the attention of the broader public and gave them voices which the government, in consultation with the Leader of the Opposition, feels will add to the discussions in this place. And so nothing said in such circumstances can or should be taken to reflect the policy of the government. What it reflects are the views and advocacy of the consultation senator. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Senator. As many?
Thank you. Madam Senator, Madam President, coming off the heel of such a dynamic presentation from my colleague, in future we're gonna tag team, or we may just decide that either of us could speak for both of us. Having said that, I'm going to be short. Madam President and Honorable Senators, I am extremely grateful to the Almighty for sparing my life to be here in this honorable chamber one more time. Indeed, my Lord has been extremely good to me. Madam President and Honorable Senators, before I add to this resolution in thanking Her Excellency, Dame Marguerite Pindlin, Governor General, for so graciously reading the speech from Parliament, permit me to send condolences and get well and congratulations to a number of persons. As a retired teacher and a unionist, Madam President, I endeavor to always thank and highlight the wonderful teachers, administrators, unionists, education personnel, and officers in the Ministry of Education. Thank you, Madam. And indeed, the Bahamas. I know about the thankless struggles they endure over the years,
but yet they persevere. I, along with my colleague, Senator Dodson, vowed to be the voice in this honorable chamber for them. Happy belated World Teachers' Day to the president and officers of both BUT and BEMU and to their entire membership. I was following them and I know that they had a wonderful half day from their tiresome labor. I want them to know that they are not alone. I also want them to invite the village to go with them. Sympathies are extended to the family of the late Karen Morse. Karen and I went to school together in Crooked Island. And even though she left home a long time ago, she was always desirous to get back home. And so I want to take this opportunity to give my condolences to her daughter, Dora, and her sisters, Rosemary and Katie. In the same vein, I want to send sympathy to my friend and brother, colleague, Jason Springer, on the passing of his grandfather, Kenneth Roll. Brother Roll was buried yesterday, and I was in Senate, so I didn't have the opportunity to go there. Get well soon is also extended to all teachers and administrators who are home convalescing and recuperating from whatever condition they is. I speak, I want to send a hello to my former district superintendent, Mrs. Lillian Culmer Miller. She's coming along fine and she's at home. Finally, Madam Assistant Speaker, Vice Speaker, this month is Cancer Awareness Month. And I was listening to the radio the other day, which states that we have a very high rate of cancer, breast cancer that is, in the Bahamas. And so I salute all those survivors, and some of them are men with the prostate as well as, and those who are receiving treatment. I want us all individually and collectively to continue to pray for them and support them and support their fundraising efforts. I want to say a shout out to Yazenda's Creation. The manager there is none other than my cousin Marilyn Farquharson Monroe. She's also a survivor. And I think sometime in November, there's a the 4th of November, there's a fundraising for those persons, her in particular, for her condition. Madam President and Senator, many years ago, I had the distinct pleasure of meeting Her Excellency at a social at her residence in Skyline Drive. She, along with her husband, the late Sir Lyndon Pinlan, were the most gracious host and hostess that I had encountered at the time. I really did not know what to expect at the said function, but I remembered quite vividly that Her Excellency made me feel most comfortable. In fact, we spoke about our commonalities and her upbringing in South Andros. Madam President, Madam Vice, As I sat and stood up periodically during the reading of the speech from the throne, I could not help but notice. Thank you very much. I could not help from notice how the Governor General exhibit elegance, grace, diplomacy, poise, decorum, stamina, and the likes. Her Excellency's verse did not waver. She was quite clear and concise. Madam Chair, she made the lengthy speech from the throne seem distinctly short. Her Excellency's made legendary singer, composer Ronnie Butler's song, AG Nothing But a Number, come alive in living colors. I am indeed proud of all of our Governor Generals and post-1973. But my biases are obvious for Dame Ivy Dumont and Dame Marguerite Pinlin. They both are great role models of Bahamian females. May God continue to guide Dame Marguerite and to keep this extraordinary role model in good and perfect health. Madam Chair, the speech from the throne came fully loaded. I'm sorry, the President is now taking the chair. Madam President, please forgive me, ma'am. The speech from the throne came fully loaded. In fact, it spelled good news for the family islanders, teachers, unions, student entrepreneurs, and the list goes on and on. In listening to the speech and reading it in its entirety, I am convinced that even if half of the initiatives are implemented during this 5-year period, the Bahamas will be transformed. Madam President, the reality is that we need all hands on deck. Government, opposition, everybody must put our shoulders to the wheel. We may not agree on all the particulars, as all matters are not agreeable. But we must find common ground. Our aims and objectives should be to try and make the Bahamas and the Bahamian people priority in everything that we do and say. The government is on record for recognizing that education and training of Bahamians are key factors in our progressive and sustainable economic development of our nation. This is powerful, as there are a number of items that must be addressed for this to take place. I am optimistic that the Honorable Jeffrey Lord, Minister of Education, is up to this task. Yeah. He appears to be very frank and fair and desires the very best for education. But I reiterate what I say: all hands must be on deck. No man is an island, and no man ought to stand alone. I commend the government in conjunction with the Ministry of Education for their valiant attempt in the issuing of government scholarships and grants. I wasn't quite pleased because I guess I wanted much, much more. But the reality is that many deserving students were unable to receive scholarships. for one reason or the other. I look forward to seeing additional students being afforded this opportunity for educational advancement as the process is revised, because there's no telling the process must be revised. In my opinion, those students who receive scholarships from the Bahamian people should be mandated to return to this country and give no less than 3 years service back to them. That's the people's money. And they were educated using that money. A step in the right direction is the government's commitment provide school, preschool enrollment for 2.5 years old. Now I know that this is the Honorable Prime Minister's baby, because the preschool age is now 4. But wouldn't it be a wonderful thing if preschoolers, like I see those in New Providence, goes to school, preschool at the age of 2.5, but that's private. It would be a wonderful thing if the government could see through that happens. This should be available not only in New Providence, but in all of the family islands. Madam President, as there's a gap, there's a notable gap in the education between boys and girls in the same class. Now, the exploration of single gender classes has somewhat been proven to be beneficial in some regards. I am not the authority in this field, but I hope that a substantial effort would be made to reach the males as we prepared for the next generation. And we cannot afford to lose our males. I fully endorse the idea of reforming of the Education Act to allow the establishment of a National Education Commission. Teachers will benefit greatly from this commission. Greater autonomy should be given to school district officers, principal, administrators to tailor or create the programs that are more relevant or practical for their unique sectors, as long as they are designed to fulfill the long-term goals of the Ministry of Education. I would be fine with that. Madam President, as noted in the speech from Parliament, the government is committed to the exploration and development of the untapped resources of Family Island. And when it comes to Family Island, Madam President, I can tell you that I am extremely passionate about that. I call upon Family Islanders to identify those untapped resources and potential business opportunities, not only in the field of tourism and banking, but agriculture, fishing, urban development, and the likes, to formulate their business proposal and to submit it to the government for consideration. The Family Island Incentive Act will be renewed to promote growth in all areas. Since 1996, the local government system has been implemented in the Family Island. As stated in the speech from the throne, it is the intention of the government. I want the government to make that a reality soon, that they would provide a portion of the revenue collected by the district council to use locally. This is a blessing for Family Islanders. Now, they haven't said the percentage, but this is mine. This is my take. The percentage of that revenue was not stated, but I would like to suggest a 60-40 ratio. 60% of that money be left in the Family Island and 40% someplace else, I don't know. Madam President, Madam President and Senators, can you imagine what this could do for Family Islands? Wonders. Then we can enhance the inter-island trading. Crooked Island and Fortune Island, Long can trade their whelks and their curbs and that they harvest from the rocks to Eleuthera, and we could get some of those mouth-watering pineapples. And the idea of the trades between the island is welcome. Incidentally, many years ago, the rich brown soil from the caves in Cripple Hill, Crooked Island, and the rich brown soil from Morstown and Crooked Island were transported by sailing vessels from Crooked Island to Eleuthera. So Eleuthera owes. They have the soil that was transported out of the caves in Crooked Island. With the help of money invested in agricultural pursuits like farm road and access to the soils, Crooked Islanders could possibly venture in pineapple and other farming themselves. Madam President, Family Islanders welcome the fresh start and jump start initiative. This is a glorious opportunity for young Bahamians to own their own business. Now, I didn't see where it says it, but the idea, I understand, the government would give them a plan, help them with their plan and give them a small amount of money to start their businesses. I'm not the authority in that, but I'll find out how that goes, because young persons are asking me on a daily basis, how do we go about that? This is an opportunity that they should run for. Persons from Auckland, Megwana, Crooked Island, and Fortune Island have joined together to speak with one united force. I can speak to that because we have just joined hands and heart together in what we call a Fortune Crooked Island Association, which encompasses Auckland, Long Key, and Crooked Island. And we're going to begin to build those areas with our own hands, and we expect the government to meet us either halfway or a little more than halfway. This is indeed the way to go, Madam President. You will hear more about us in the coming months. For me, Madam President, a very important initiative for Family Islanders is the opening of urban renewal offices in all Family Island constituencies. This is commendable. And I say kudos to Minister Denisha Roll and the Cabinet of the Bahamas for being visionary. Not that urban wasn't there, but urban was not in all of the constituencies in the Family of Island. Let's make that clear. And I hope to play a pivotal role in the urban renewal businesses in those Family Islands, because I am a Family Island woman. Family Islanders, you must be the gatekeeper for your island. Do not allow the spill-off of what happens in the city to infiltrate your island. Let us move those islands from little petty crime to crime free. You're not like Nassau. This should be the mantra of all the islands on crime. And while we on crime, I too share the sentiments of my fellow Senator Moss, who's indeed sorry for what is happening with the lives of young persons and the crime. But I'm optimistic that it's going to be a long process. When it's over, it's going to be very good for the Bahamas. This should be the mantra of all islands in crime. When strangers arrive on your island, you should inquire who they are and who they are connected to. You don't have to be embarrassed about that. Guard your heritage. That's what it's called. We all know that family island development is directly connected to the continued success of the Bahamas. So if the Bahamas is going to be successful, and it's going to be the Bahamas that we want it to be, there has to be the mix with the family island. The family island is coming through. Finally, Madam President, for 3 consecutive years, hurricanes have devastated some of our islands of the Bahamas. It's from 2015 to now. The Bahamians who are still displaced from Walking, Matthew, and now Aaron, the Bahamians who are still displaced from Hurricane Walking, Matthew, and Irma, we need to seriously help those persons to get back on their feet. Some of them, I speak from 2015, from Hurricane Walking. Some of our persons in Crooked Island and Auckland have yet to get back in their houses. And so we need to do something with haste to help them form a semblance of togetherness and back to their old state of housing and, of course, their state of mind. Because when you're not in the setting that you would like to be, your state of mind wavers. I wish to commend Prime Minister Minnis for his vision and his action in the evacuating of a resident from the southern Bahamas and from Ragged Island, and his subsequent gesture of love and brotherhood extended to the Prime Minister and the people of Dominica. I can say to you that the Prime Minister word to me was that when he's finished with Ragged Island, it will be the island to be envied. I would like to see that. I'm hopeful that that is going to be done, and I congratulate Ragged Islanders who are resilient and took matters somewhat in their hands and decided that they're going to build their island back better, 100% better than it was. And so it's commendable. The government is fulfilling its commitment to the construction and repairs of small homes for persons who meet the requirement, as home ownership is desirous for most Bahamians. Now, the same concept that the government is using for the inner city in Nassau, we could take that to the family islands, and we could tailor that, because the need for homes, rented homes with a zeal for purchase is a good idea. And trust me, many family islanders need their homes. And so, Madam President, with the future looking bright for the Bahamas, I am delighted to support this resolution to thank Her Excellency the Governor General for delivering such a wonderful speech from the squares of Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Senator. As many. The Chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Michael Dalvo.
So I move that the House now suspend until 3 p.m. today,
Is there,
13th October.
is there a second? It has been moved and seconded that the business of the House do now suspend until 3:30. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The business of the House, the Senate will now suspend for lunch until 3 p.m.